question, yeah? What do you know about autism? What have you ever heard about autism? Or what have you read or watched around autism? If you ever do, it's about these sort of, what are they called? Genius, savant, and completely dysfunctional. Able to calculate math at very great speed, but don't know where their car keys are. It's a Hollywood version, isn't it? But what is it like to live with autism, or to live with a person who lives with autism? How would one even know? But it's more than that, isn't it? You have a child who lives with autism.
Yes, I do.
How did you know that your son is autistic?
Right back a bit to 18 months old, we noticed that he was losing his milestones. With every child, it's one of those things that you get your child checked every so often when you go to the clinic. But we noticed that our son was losing his speech. He started displaying mannerisms that were not considered within the norm range. He started biting people. He would throw tantrums, beyond the normal, what would fall under a normal range of a 2-year-old. This is a child who's throwing themselves, not worried that he'll get hurt. He doesn't seem to flinch when he's in pain. So that really brought a lot of alarm bells.
How did you know it wasn't the onset of the terrible?
That's true, I agree. But even a 2-year-old, there is a point where you actually can see that this is not now being a terrible 2. There is cause of alarm. This is a child who was speaking, who was starting to say the pre-verbal was coming up now, the mama, baba, he was starting to call people around the home, and then suddenly this child doesn't look at you in the eyes, cannot say these words. He seems to be lost in a world of his own. And I want you to remember, at that time, we didn't know what autism was.
Wow. So what did you think was going on?
Now, I'm seeing things that I can't understand. I'm asking my mom what's going on, and my mom also does not know what is going on. So we are very practical people. So we decided, no, let's go see a doctor and try and figure out what is going on. And when we met a doctor who looked at the child, the usual, what is the milestones, how was your pregnancy, those things have to be checked out. And we got to the point where the doctor said, well, based on what I can observe and what you're telling me about your child has autistic tendencies.
Had you had an unusual pregnancy? Had you had a difficult pregnancy?
No, just the normals, the morning sickness, everything was fine.
Before you got to the diagnosis that your child has autistic tendencies, what else had been checked for?
One of the things you need to rule out are the hearing of your child. Check the child if they can hear, because if they're not able to hear well, they can display some of the behavior may be expected because they can't hear you. You check their vocal cords if they are developing okay. You check their sight. You do the first basics.
Yes.
And rule those out. Then from there, and you see everything else is fine. His hearing was perfect. His throat was fine. His eyesight was good. Then what is the problem?
The doctor says something which sort of sounds, in my mind at least at this point in the way in which you've explained it, says your child has autistic tendencies. What does that even mean?
Now, that's exactly now the point. For me at that point, what is autism? I don't know what autism is. I've never heard of a sickness or a diagnosis of autism. And I want to think that I am enlightened enough to know about child development, because I worked in a school setting, so I've seen children grow, and I can more or less tell when a child is having special needs or not. So it meant now going to study. and really getting to read everything there is to be read on the subject of autism.
Paul isn't your only child.
No.
No. There's the raising of your other children and the sort of normal household, growing up, family,
Yeah.
living
Oh my.
things.
That I cannot even explain, even to this date, because we are still the same family.
Yes.
You know, siblings always have squabbles.
Yeah.
Now, when you have sibling squabbles and add on it the cherry of the autism on it, you have a whole different thing. My house can be like a madhouse because Paul is throwing a tantrum because he's not happy because maybe Stephen, his brother, has not shared his lollipop, or maybe Michelle has 2 sweets and will not share because she's 7 and doesn't understand why does Paul, a very big boy like himself, want her sweets. He had his. You know, those simple things that in a normal family would be give the baby.
Yes. Yes.
But now it is give the big one.
Yes, of course.
It's
it's reversed.
yeah.
Now, how does autism display outside of behavior? Is there, do they have physiological needs that are different? Do you need to sort of live in a specialized kind of setting at home?
I wouldn't say that because I'd like to encourage parents that from an early age there is intervention at an early age. You see, it is important even with children in generally. You have to put them on a routine. You know, those basic things. If you don't do that with any child, you will at some point really have a rough time when they are going to school and stuff. But now with this autistic child, you also need to structure their life in a way to help them also be able to adjust in the family setting and also to help the family members to be able to accommodate the child. It's not always easy, but it's doable.
You've seen quite a lot of family settings like these. First of all, tell us why you're part of the Autism Spectrum Association and what got you started.
Most parents are normally referred to go see a certain doctor, and when they're told that their child is on the spectrum, that is it. So where do they go from there? Depending on what level you are in society, there are those who would seek private input, but you know, if you just common wananchi, then you definitely don't know what to do, and hence where now the labeling comes, where you know you might be bewitched, or this is from your other end of your family. So with that in mind, I decided I've got experience. Let me see how we can help with whatever is ongoing.
Talk a little bit about this spectrum, because it almost sounds like you can be one autism to
Yes.
10 autism.
Yes.
What constitutes the spectrum? How does one know where one is or one's loved one is?
It's a triad of impairments. So it affects social interaction. It affects how people communicate. Just as Ruth was saying, the problem is with autism, there are 2 elements of it. As in your introduction you stated, there's the one who's good with maths and numbers. So that's the high end of the spectrum. So you have the high functioning autism and low functioning autism. So in the high end of the spectrum, we call it Asperger's syndrome.
Yes.
So that is the syndrome that is known because they're very clever, they develop like normal children, but they lack in social interaction and social skills. They can't make conversation, they cannot feel or see your mood, know your mood or something like that. So that is the problem. So we have 2 ends of it. So we have the high end and the low spectrum, so which we call classic autism. Here is where a child will have no communication, may lack in eye contact, and also in communication, because that is the key area that most people look at.